Today, we are diving into a really fascinating economic model that just completely flips a common business idea on its head. You know, the one that says, more choice, more suppliers always means a better price for you. Well, it turns out that sometimes the very flexibility you think is your greatest advantage is actually the thing that costs you the most. And this quote right here and just perfectly captures the dilemma for any buyer today. I mean, in this age of global e-commerce, it's never been easier to find new, cheaper suppliers. But with those rock-bottom prices comes this huge question mark. Can they actually deliver? And that's really the core conflict, isn't it? Businesses are constantly caught in this tug-of-war between the old, reliable, we know they'll get it done way of things, and the incredible promise and, yeah, the potential peril of all these new, unproven, but way cheaper options you can find online. So picture this. On one hand, you've got your trusted partner. You know they'll deliver on time, every time. But you definitely pay a premium for that peace of mind. And on the other hand, you've got the newcomer. Their prices are so tempting, right? A total game changer for your bottom line. But there's that nagging risk. What if they fail? What if they can't deliver? Leaving you in a very, very expensive bind. Now, all the textbooks and honestly our gut feeling tells us that throwing a cheaper competitor into the mix gives the buyer all the power. You can just play them off each other and, walk away with an amazing deal. But what if that's not the whole story? What if it's more complicated than that? To see why that's not always true, we're going to look at a very specific model from a research paper by Granani and Ray. They set up a sealed bid auction, but with a couple of really interesting twists designed to tackle this exact problem. Okay, so the first 3 points are pretty standard stuff for an auction. But that last one, point 4, that's the real kicker. The buyer isn't locked into buying, say, exactly 1,000 units. They can look at the bids and decide, you know what, I'll order more just to be safe, or nope, I'll order less and just make the rest myself. This flexibility, this is their supposed superpower. So you can see how this would work, right? If the bids come in too high, the buyer can just pull back and make some of the product themselves. If that new supplier seems a little too risky, they can over-order from the reliable one to cover their bases. It seems like the perfect tool to fight off any uncertainty and give the buyer total control. I mean, it just seems obvious, doesn't it? More control, more options, more flexibility. That has to lead to a better deal for the person writing the check. It just has to, right? Well, here is where it gets really interesting. This is the big twist. The model shows something completely counterintuitive. That superpower, that extra flexibility, doesn't just fail to help the buyer. It can actually actively hurt them. And no, that is not a typo. The very tool that was designed to give the buyer an edge, that ability to change the total order size, is the exact thing that creates a situation where they can be forced to pay the absolute worst case, highest possible price. The superpower completely backfires. So how do they do it? Through something called implicit collusion. Now, this doesn't mean they're in some secret chat room planning their bids. They don't have to be. The logic of this flexible auction itself allows them to structure their bids in a way that perfectly predicts what the buyer's best move is going to be, and then corners them into the outcome that's best for the suppliers, not the buyer. So how on earth is this even possible? Well, the answer is hiding in the fascinating world of game theory. It really comes down to 2 key concepts that explain exactly why this auction plays out in this completely unexpected way. Okay, first up is this idea of an efficient outcome. Now, this isn't about the price the buyer pays. It's about what's the absolute cheapest way for the entire system, that's both suppliers and the buyer combined, to get all the goods produced. It's the setup that minimizes the total collective cost for everyone involved. Second, we've got the Nash equilibrium. In a game like this auction, it's the only outcome that's truly stable. It's that point where, given what the other guy is doing, you have no reason to change your own strategy. No one can do better by making a different move on their own. It's the predictable, logical end of the game. And this, right here, is where it all comes together. The core finding of the paper is that the only stable, predictable result of this auction, that Nash equilibrium we just talked about, is for the suppliers to bid in a way that creates the most efficient outcome for the whole system. But, and here's the paradox, that very same outcome forces the buyer to pay the absolute maximum possible price. So what's most efficient for the group is the most expensive for the customer. Okay, so let's pull this out of the world of theory. What does this actually mean for real-world business, especially in this crazy, fast-paced world of digital marketplaces and automated auctions? So what's the big lesson here? Well, first, more flexibility is not a silver bullet. Savvy suppliers can actually exploit it. Second, remember that what's efficient for the whole system isn't always what's cheapest for you. And maybe most importantly, this is a huge cautionary tale. In these complex digital auctions, your gut feeling about who has the power can be totally spectacularly wrong. And that really leaves us with a pretty powerful question for the world we live in now. When we build these incredibly complex, automated systems for business, who are we really designing them for? In a game that's increasingly run by algorithms, who truly holds the power? The person with the money? Or the person who best understands the rules of the game?